The success of a marriage sometimes rests on how willing we are to ask for help. Even if you're capable and strong as individuals, sometimes we need help when we're journeying towards each other. When we reach out and ask others around us about their experiences, we often find that we receive the tools which can then apply to our own marriages to help smooth the rough edges off one another. Our guests today have learnt to apply these tools to aid them in fulfilling the vision for their marriage and for building a platform where they can champion one another. Welcome to Embracing the Challenge with me, Gabriel Chan. I'm joined by my lovely wife, Rebecca, and Corinne and Hasani. It's great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
I'm Hasani Jess. So I'm a Chief Technology Officer. And we've been married 14 years, father of 4. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay, my name's Corinne and I am married to this wonderful man, Hasani. I'm a mother of 4. I run a property business and I also attend Bible school.
Cool. What kind of things do you guys do for fun?
Traveling is definitely a big pleasure. It's actually a funny story. Before we got married, after university, I really wanted to travel the world, and that didn't happen. Got into life, working and things like that. But then after we got married, we said we're going to travel the world together, which is what we've been doing for the last 14 years. So traveling is definitely a big passion of ours.
We just kind of take the kids with us and just get on with it, really. Last year, we went on a road trip across America for a month.
Wow.
We also were in China earlier on in that year, and we've been to lots of different places across the globe. So yeah, that's definitely something we like to do.
How do you travel with 4 children through America for a month?
To be honest, it was actually quite easy. We've got good kids. They're really well behaved. So we had a big SUV, packed everyone in.
Yeah.
We had a dry run in Malaga last year with to say, okay, we're going to make sure we pack light rather than our usual hundreds of suitcases everywhere. And yeah, so we had a dry run, and then going through from the south to the north of America, it was actually quite straightforward.
Yeah.
They're good kids.
They were, and I think we were enjoying the experience so much that it was just so much fun.
So tell us a little bit about how you met.
So we met at university when I was about 19, you were about 20, and after that we both came to faith slowly. I came to faith first, and then our relationship broke up, unfortunately. Then Hasani came to faith about 3 or 4 years later, and then it was at that point you asked me to marry you, and we said yes. I said yes, and then we got married.
And how did this new faith element change your relationship?
Well, so for me, it was a complete change. So I think before I became a Christian, marriage was not really part of my life plan at all. And then becoming a godly man, your whole perspective of everything changes, right? So at the time I came to faith, we weren't together. So Corinne was actually in America studying. I was a consultant in the UK doing our own thing. But coming to the Lord, it really put a godly relationship in a very different perspective for me. So once that happened, and then we kind of reconnected, we ended up at the same church. And I think, God just put it back together, say, this is the woman for you. I showed you to her all those years ago. You didn't really understand the purpose that I had in store for you guys. And yet, when it came together, it's been a wonderful ride ever since.
Now you're both successful people in your own right. You've established yourselves in your career, and then you on this journey towards marriage. There must have been some challenges in that. Now, how did you go about intentionally preparing yourselves for marriage?
Well, we had a lot of support from the very beginning. We have small groups at our church, and our leaders of our small groups were really instrumental in talking to both of us and preparing us and getting us ready. But in the actual run-up to the marriage and the actual wedding, we had premarital counselling, and we had about 10 sessions with our pastor. And we ended up going for a lot of different issues and a lot of different things in preparation for marriage, but it was instrumental. It was so important for us.
What were some of the things that you were talking about during that time?
Well, there was really practical things like your finances, you know, where you're going to live, roles and responsibilities. I don't know if you remember
I think
anything
one of the
else.
key sessions was on expectations. So what you expect from one another. And you talked about the roles. What's the purpose of family? Do you want to have children? Do you not want to have children? Yeah. It's surprising that some people end up in a relationship not having discussed some of these things. Yeah, sure. And it was really a good opportunity to get things out on the table and make sure that we're both going into a permanent, lifelong relationship with all our cards on the table, so that we can be open and honest with each other going forward.
And when you did get married and you were kind of setting up your life as a couple together, what were the types of things that you did to kind of establish that new family unit?
Yeah, so for me, getting married was a big step, obviously. Coming from unfortunately, a broken home, one of my inspirations was my grandmother. My grandmother and grandfather, they were married for 52 years until my grandfather passed away. And one of the things we also did was we spent a lot of time with her. She ministered to us and gave us some tips and things like that. And one of the tips that she said was, you know, you are now a unit. The two of you are going to be going through all sorts of ups and downs together. And to a certain extent, some of that needs to be private. So some of that needs to be between the two of you and God. You need to be working through some of those issues. But at the same time, you need to also take benefit of the wider supporting network that you have within your church. So those are some of the things that we needed to make sure were established right from the beginning in our marriage. And I'm so grateful that we did, because it's been a big benefit for us.
Definitely.
And I just want to pick up on something you said in terms of the preparations. You were having a conversation about roles and responsibilities. Now, in the 21st century, and we're talking to you particularly, you both are successful, you both got strong careers, you've both established yourselves in your field, and you're coming together, you're getting married, you're strong personalities, and you're thinking about, how do we make this marriage thing work? And so, you know, there are a few different seasons in that. There's being married, there's then being parents, there's promotion, there's starting your own business. Could you maybe talk us through those one at a time? Like, in coming together as a husband and wife, how did you look at your roles and responsibilities in that context?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. For me, the root of it all was I've got enormous respect for Corinne. So even as professionals, she came into the relationship as a superstar graduate. So there's a foundation there of respect for her capabilities, regardless of what she chose to do professionally. But coming into a relationship, so coming into a marriage, things do change. Because I remember when we first got married, I was in consulting, traveling around a lot. And within a few weeks, Corinne said to me, we didn't get married to be apart, right? So we need to be together. So you need to look at different career choices, which I quite happily did, because I agreed. I also didn't get married for me to be in one place and you to be in another place. I know some couples do have that dynamic in their relationship, but we had the opportunity to make different choices so that we could be together and work things through together. So I think that was an example of one of those choices.
I think also with roles and responsibilities, we've never been very strong on, you know, you have to do this and I have to do this. Especially at the beginning, we weren't so much. I think, like in terms of cooking, Hasani's an amazing cook. He loves to cook, so I was like, "This is great." And at the same time, I cooked as well, and you know, we just kind of shared life together. We had our first child quite soon, and I think that is where we started to see a shifting in dynamic and career and professionalism and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming into that next season that you talked about of parenthood. Obviously, that brings a completely different dynamic to your relationship. I think when you're a single person, you're just focused on yourself, right? Then you become a couple. And now, like Corinne said, you have to take into account the other person's feelings, the other person's desires, and that puts a different strain. And then you've got a complete dependent that comes into the relationship. And that dependent is not going to move, right? So everything has to revolve around that dependence. So that then brings another set of dynamics, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's where we started to maybe start to think more about these roles and responsibilities. Because before that, I was, very career driven. Hasani was very career driven. We were both going like that. And then we had our first daughter. And then I went straight back to work after about a year. And then I had my second child a few years after that. And I think we began to see the strain on the marriage at that point, because it felt like we were juggling a lot. That's when we started to think, okay, how is this going to work practically? Where one person's trying to take children, he would be trying to drop children at school, I'd be trying to go to work early, I'd be trying to leave early. In the middle of it, I'd be like, can you do this? Can you do that? There's no shopping in the house. It was a bit chaotic, because I don't think we'd actually planned how it was going to work. We're kind of get on with it, people, aren't we?
Yeah.
I don't think we sit and plan like how it's all going to happen. So when it's there, we just deal with it.
Yeah. And it was challenging. It was definitely challenging, because, like I said, you've got that dynamic of competing priorities, right? Working, children, childcare, and obviously the primary priority of your marriage and your spouse.
So when you say, so at the beginning, roles and responsibilities wasn't such a big thing, but then kind of further down the track as kids came along, then roles and responsibilities maybe became a bit more important. So if you think of, like, I guess Ephesians 5 is something that gets quoted quite a lot for kind of the man and the woman, the wife respecting her husband and the husband loving his wife. How has that kind of worked in your scenario?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think we understood those roles and responsibilities because they became apparent. I feel like, Hasani has wonderful strengths, but as a wife, I also have wonderful strengths. And as a mother, I think my maternal instinct was sometimes stronger than your paternal instinct. Not necessarily that he didn't love his children and he wouldn't do everything for his children, but more in the sense that, as a mother, I want my children to look really smart before they go to school. I have certain expectations. Hasani's like, okay, it's fine, just put them in the car like this. And I'd be like, no!
This morning at our house, Gabriel getting Isaiah dressed.
He was wearing clothes from when he was the stage before, because all of his clothes are in the laundry, so...
What's wrong with that?
See, that's exactly how he'd be. He'd be like, that's absolutely fine, let them go.
Yeah.
So certain things like that start to... You start to analyse and realise that actually, I have certain strengths as a woman. We can't deny those strengths. Hasani has certain strengths as a man. We can't ignore those things. And I know, in this society, people don't like to talk about gender roles and that kind of thing, but it became obvious to me, that, oh, actually, I'm coming to pick up a child who's exhausted, crying, I've given her a spoon of Calpol and I knew she kind of had a cold, but now it's turned into a full-blown cold. That really hurts your heart as a mother, and you start thinking, actually, I probably need to be around my child a bit more. And I think it was never that Hasani said, you need to do this or I need to do that. I think it was me actually understanding and embracing that role as a mother and saying, actually, I really need to put into my children, because I realise that if I don't think it's going to be beneficial to them down the line. And I know everyone's got different perspectives on that, and I never, try and influence anyone anyway, but I just felt for myself, as I saw my children getting older, that I needed to kind of be there a bit more. And I think when I stopped working after we had my son, my third child, I think our house there was a peace. It was like, there was a bit of order. It just felt a bit less chaotic than before.
I think that's reality. Like you were talking earlier about the rub of practical issues, how many kids you've got, the different jobs you've got, all of that is a very challenging context to work in and work through. But then also it affects your relationship. And when you're just processing children to school and back home from school and to bed, and you can almost come like ships in the night as a couple and begin to take each other for granted and lose that sense of love and lose that sense of appreciating one another and loving one another. Have you ever come to a place where you had to reflect on your love languages toward each other and perhaps adjust in that area?
Yeah, I think there's a really important influence in my life was my grandmother, as I mentioned, who was married 52 years. And one of her principles was her husband was number one, right? My grandfather. He's the number one person, and everybody else was a number two. And for me, that was one of the principles I took into our marriage. So even with all those challenges, all those dynamics, the care and the love that I have for my children and our wider family and all those type of things, Corinne has always been my number one priority. So that is the pivot point that we do for everything else. So all the investments that I need to make sure happen into our relationship. In my mind, I think of my marriage as a thing. So it's like a tangible thing that needs investment, that needs love and nourishing. And that is crucially important to me.
And so, Corinne, for you, what about Hasani? He's talked about how he likes to special and protect your relationship. In what ways do you show him love?
I think one of the things I've learnt about Hasani is that he likes to be affirmed. He likes you to recognise what he has done, you know, and I think that's a natural human emotion. And I think what I learnt early on, we had some, I think both of us being strong characters, sometimes we'd butt heads and, you know, we wouldn't always be able to communicate effectively. And in some of our early stages, we had marital counselling with our pastors at church, and I think that was really helpful because they gave us like specific tools and nuggets that we were able to use to help in our communication. But one of the things we were told was to affirm each other and to say, you know, I really appreciate that you have done this, 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 and this. I really appreciate how you support me. I really appreciate that you're there for me, because sometimes we can feel it and we can think it, but we might not share it with the other person. And I think that that's something that I know about Hasani, and I think that really helps smooth over some of those issues.
And I think also in today's age, you know, with wanting to special a family and with all the busyness that we carry at work and the fact that people can just invade our lives at any point through our technology, it really requires us to set some healthy boundaries. How have you done that, kept work out of family life?
It's definitely a challenge. And being a chief technology officer, technology is part of my life. It's what I've been doing forever. However, we do have certain rules in our house. There's no tech in my bedroom. So I don't have a TV, radio or anything like that in the bedroom. And even though I do sneak the smartphone in each night, it mysteriously disappears before we go to sleep. So there are some boundaries that we do to try and keep technology influences to a minimum.
And I hear you on that. I mean, me and Rebecca have had many conversations, you know, about, you know, as a pastor, people have needs, and people are contacting you all the different times of the day. And what's that been like for you?
I would say challenging at times. Like if we go out for a date, occasionally I'd put my phone away and it's on silent and I just ignore it. Gabe will sometimes pull it out and have a look, and I'm like, put it away, put your phone away.
Yeah. But I think it says so much, doesn't it? When you say you love your partner by setting boundaries on technology and keeping special spaces for you to just connect is such a vital thing, and just one of those things that we need to think more and more about as we get more and more technologically minded.
Absolutely.
And we have to give each other, you know, time to also have a break. You know, we all need to have a break. We all need to switch off. Otherwise, you know, we are continually under pressure, and that's not good for a marriage.
I agree. We all need space from work, space to love one another, space to enjoy our families. And we also sometimes need space to grow and to process where we're at in life. And I think one of the things that provides a context to do that is the fact that marriage is a covenant. It's a commitment to each other. It's saying to one another, you know, I'm in this for life. Because when you make that decision, it looks like something in your behaviors. Now, how have you experienced covenant in your context?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things I'd like to say on the covenant aspect of a marriage. One, like you said, Gabriel, it's permanent, right? So for me, coming into this relationship, there was no plan B. So there was no other option. There wasn't, okay, if something goes wrong, maybe I'll have another go somewhere else. This is it. This was it for me. However, having said that, I know that can sound quite scary to a lot of people, right? It's like, oh, it's a permanent decision, it's forever, which it is, and that can be quite thing to put off. But the way that God has really been dealing with me on things of covenant and permanency is it's natural. God built us to be in this permanent relationship. He built me to be in a permanent relationship with Corinne. He built me to be in a permanent relationship with my children. It's a natural thing, even though it's really significant. It's a natural thing that He's given us that grace and that ability to do it.
And I think also with covenant, it's about us growing together. You know, it's been almost 14 years we've been married, and, you know, we're still getting to know each other. We're still having different challenges, we're having different celebrations. Things are continually moving. It's like an ever-evolving marriage. So I think that's one of the good things about covenant, is that we've made this commitment, we've made this agreement, but within that, there are so many parameters and things change and we evolve.
And would you say covenant is a safe place to resolve conflicts? So you talk about the two of you being quite strong personalities, and how does that?
I think so, and I think one of the things that we had again in one of our marital counselling sessions was learning about, you know, when you have actually decided that this is a covenant and there is no plan B, because I remember one of the pastors said, you know, there is no plan B. You know, you can't be having a plan B in your head, that, you know, because it means that you don't actually fully commit to the relationship. You don't fully commit to resolving things because you're thinking, okay, well, if it all really goes bad, I'm going here. So that was one of the things that I think once we established, actually, you know, this is it. You know, we make this what it is, and we you know, we can give to each other. We can give each other our best, or we can not give each other our best. And I think these are some of the things that we ironed out in the early years that mean that now we're just really enjoying being married, and we're just getting to see the fruit of that.
I think there's another element that for me, being a godly man, having Jesus in the relationship is quite chastening sometimes, right? So you might think you're right. You might think, oh no, it's okay for me to be upset about the thing or angry about the thing. And then the Holy Spirit will say, actually, no, I'm not letting you get away with that. You think, no, not this time again. And I think having that dynamic in our relationship, that there's the ultimate arbiter, that will bring us, always going to bring us back together. And being married to a godly woman is really important in that aspect, right? Because yeah, it's all well and good me feeling that way, but I also know at the end of the day, the Holy Spirit is going to deal with Corinne too. So that's something that I know is really helpful for us, and it's been helpful for the last 14 years, and hopefully the next 14 and beyond.
I think it's so powerful, like you say, as a man, to know that we need to be under authority ourselves and we're not free to make our own decisions. And I think that that's very much in the realm of what marriage is about as Christians. It's not just a marriage between two, it's a marriage between three. It's husband, wife, under God, and learning how to flow with him and walk in submission to him is one of those challenges. And I love what you said about the Holy Spirit will always keep us right. I mean, I think when we think about our vows and the things that we promised one another, for you guys 14 years ago, for us 6 years ago, the things that the Holy Spirit can pick up on. Hey, didn't you say you'd be with each other in sickness and in health, and with each other in times of richness and poverty? And how's that worked out for you?
So it's interesting because I think in our premarital, the pastor took us through finances as an example of, you know, what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours. And so our finances have always been joined right from the beginning. So we only have one account. Everything's in there or not in there, as the case may be. And there was a funny story that I think it was about 6 years ago. Corinne wanted to buy a really nice handbag, and she said, "Oh, can I buy this? Can I buy this handbag?" Not that she needs permission, but as a couple, we agree on these things, and it was quite an expensive one. I said, well, babe, you know what's in the account. If you think it's the right thing to do, you go for it. And in the end, she said, actually, no, I'm not going to go for it.
I looked at the account and said, actually, no.
At that time, now she's got loads of bags. But I think that was just an example of we come to agreement on certain things. And because of that position of trust and unity, I could say, well, there's only one. You know what's in there, you know what's not in there, as do I. We're both responsible for some of these aspects.
And we're working together. I think in everything, we're working together on our children, we're working together on our marriage, we're working together on our careers, we're working together. So, you know, Hasani's got a very quite busy, stressful role at the moment. And I like to help him, support him in that, talk to him about what he's going through at work. I run a property company. Hasani's very involved in that. In fact, a bit too involved sometimes. He's really been instrumental in helping the technology for the business. So, you know, we work as a team. Like, we're completely, you know, together on what we have to do. And I think we enjoy that.
I think it's so encouraging to hear that 14 years in, you're still investing in, you're still sowing into your marriage, you're still wanting to keep that at your core priority. Now, in all of your journey, you're here 14 years in marriage. What key revelation are you learning about God through your marriage, or perhaps for your marriage?
So for me, it's quite clear. Every aspect of my life, God has shown a different angle of his love for me as an individual. And being married to Corinne, it really solidified that permanency, right? That permanency of God's love for me. Because as I'm working through things with Corinne, I'm thinking, oh, this is really great. This thing's not so great. It's reminding me, oh, this is the relationship I have with God. That God is saying, Hasani, this thing, what you did was amazing. This thing, not so great. You need to make changes there. But it's in a relationship of love. So that's been the revelation for me.
That's nice. I think for me, the revelation has been that, God is always forgiving. He's continually forgiving our sins. And I think we've both become a lot more forgiving of each other. And we kind of know each other a bit better. We're a bit like, okay, Hasani's in his switch off mode now. I'm not going to talk to him about this issue, or Corinne is, I don't know what I'm doing, but we know when to talk to each other, how to, I guess, negotiate with each other a bit better. Some of the early bus stops that we would have had, we just don't really have that much more anymore. And I think it's just because it's like two stones rubbing each other smooth, which is what the pastor said when we got married. He said, when you been married for a long time, you're two rough stones at the beginning, but you're supposed to rub and rub and rub and rub and rub until very smooth stones. And we don't think we're quite smooth yet, but I think we're getting there. And I'm starting to see, some of those early wisdoms that we were given are actually starting to play out, and I think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story here with us today. It's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you need help with your marriage, maybe through a counselling course, we would encourage you to get help, or even start talking with your friends who will encourage you with their experiences. Put God at the centre of your marriage and work on living by his way. Remember, he is invested in your success as a couple.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today on Embracing the Challenge. It's been great to have you with us. And if you want to join the conversation, you can do so at our website, embracingthechallenge.life. Look forward to seeing you here next time.